copy. The tape and the shipping of it costs $110. So if you send the princely sum of $110, we'll give you BCD Unix. So I sent $110 TFR money, and we got the BCD Unix, and we started running it on a computer. And one of the beautiful things about the BCD Unix was it had a complete version of ARPA data software.
Okay.
So when we bought $110 public domain software, we had a computer network in our hands.
Okay.
And you had the source code, not only the running code, but the source code. So you could recompile it and run it on an Indian computer. You could make whatever changes you wanted. So for us, getting into communication software of the variety that the internet used, which is TCP/IP software. And we enjoyed all this. But did the poor Americans lose out on this by giving it away free? No.
No.
What happened was, there were big operating systems for which others were trying to charge $600,000. But the American software Unix was inexpensive. There were US manufacturers started making inexpensive mini computers running Unix, which were about 1/10 of the price of the big computers that the biggies were building. So America Unix took over the world. And that it became a standard for a long time. Particularly the American networking software became the standard for the world.
Yes.
And for us at TFR, what was especially advantageous was that we had all this technology under our belt. We had understood, learned, and used it by the year when was that? When we wrote the proposal for the Academic Network of India, it was 1983.
Okay.
But we were working with internet software in 1973.
Oh, you had a decade of experience.
Eh?
You had 10 years of experience.
10 years of experience. We had India's biggest computer, which was running Unix. It was not exactly TIFR. It was, by that time, we were in the daughter institute of TIFR. The computer group that became the National Center for Software Technology did many things. Like, for instance, started software education in a big way. Ran a postgraduate diploma course, probably the first postgraduate diploma course in computer software, and probably the first one to say, we don't care what is the earlier background you have. You don't have to be a 17-year-old who has passed JEE. You can be a 35-year-old statistician. You can come and join our part-time course. I will teach you software. The net result was the kind of people who came to our courses. There was a person in the class. I was teaching a course on software engineering. I said, look, I'm going to divide the class into two. There will be 60 people in one group, 60 people in another group. We are going to build an airline reservation system as a demo. And I want project managers. We will use software engineering practices. There will be a boss. I want a boss for this group and I want a boss for that group. Who will volunteer? There was a man who stood up. And so I asked him, what management experience do you have? He says, I have 4,000 people reporting to me every day.
Wow.
And what do you do? I'm the income tax commissioner for the city.
Oh. Oh.
And obviously a brilliant student once upon a time. And is the interesting thing about All India services. There are academics who loved their education, who loved to learn, and they got into All India services, but they didn't want to stop learning. So here was the income tax commissioner, then the top engineer in the railways. He was a student of ours.
Okay.
So we had a different style of, we almost created a mini open university. We had admired the Open University of England, which was politically motivated, which said education cannot be the property of the rich. Education should be for the working man also. The man whose father did not have money to send him to Cambridge. But the man who is willing to work in a restaurant as a waiter, but is willing to pay out of his salary to learn something and earn a degree.
Yeah.
This is a dream. So it became one of our dreams at the National Center for Software Technology. So where did I come into this? So we were doing many things. And one of them was software education. One of them was networking education. And therefore, when we finally thought of building a network, we said the most valuable network will be the network that helps the colleges. The most important network will be one that connects the research groups. Because research cannot be done in the absence of communication. You need the other man's paper so that you can do one better than what he has done.
Yeah.
Your paper should go to him so that he will know what you have done. So the internet became a very important infrastructure for education in the US. And the Indian researchers wanted that. So we wrote a proposal saying we will build the academic network for India and we will cooperate. The Indian academic network is not the work of one lab or not one man. It is the work of all the institutions that are ambitious enough to do something for building networking. So we joined the IITs and the other institutions gradually, one by one, universities, research groups, and so on.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks to you, I remember going to Indian Institute of Science to access my emails through the internet. Then there was quite young gentleman, I was younger, much younger, called Gopi Krishna Garg and Atul Chittas,
Right.
and
Gopi
So
Krishna Garg, yes.
yeah. So yeah, it was those days when there were you had Gopher for browsing, and you had the email facilities. Amazing. So one of the things that you did before doing this was, I think, you also set up a data communication between two campuses, right? Between TIFR and one more campus about 15 or 16 kilometers away from TIFR. Which one is that?
VJTI.
VJTI. Yeah.
Victoria Jubilee Technical Institute.
Yeah. So probably that gave you an experience in drawing up a lease line, putting a computer at the TIFR and putting a computer this side. What kind of infrastructure did you use to connect the two?
The idea was to use an Indian-made computer.
Okay.
And this was the year 1976. And the computer was a TDC 316 made by Electronics Corporation of India Limited, ECIL.
ECIL.
And So we took on the challenge. We bought at 316 out of the project funds and wrote communication software,
Mhm.
borrowed what communication software was necessary to communicate in the right protocols,
Okay.
and put it all together and brought in this utilitarian dream. It is not enough to do the research, but you must build it and let somebody enjoy the benefits of that.
Uh,
And what is the best way to let people enjoy the benefits of that? Because the syllabus in those days did not ask for a computer. Therefore, we started a evening course which will use the computer. Which a day students can use it throughout the day. But in the evening, for 2 hours, it was available for us to run a part-time course.
Oh, okay.
So we will run a part-time course, teaching software, but we will use our own computer link to make the powerful computer at TIFR available to the part-time students at the VJTI.
Okay. Mm. Mm.
So we had that running for several years, 3,
Mhm.
4 years.
Okay. Mm. Interesting. So, did you also have, how did the two, how did the two actually get into communicating? Did you go through the earlier process of in the TCP/IP stack? The actual ARPANET had the interface process uh, messaging, system in between two computers. Did you go through that, or was it a direct peer-to-peer?
We used the TCP/IP.
You use the TCP/IP for it.
We first started with the dial-up,
Okay.
and my God, it used to be quite tough to get a leased line
Mm-hmm.
in those days. We
Okay.
applied for a lease line and worked very hard, got a lease line, and then we were told that lease line cannot run TCP/IP.
Mm-hmm.
We said, doesn't matter. I will bring you sandwiches if you go to jail. We
Okay.
told each other,
Uh,
and we went and ran TCP/IP
okay. Okay. On the
and
lease line. Mm,
on the
mm,
list.
mm, mm.
For the
So,
first few years of ERNET, we were running TCP/IP while it was not entirely legal.
right. Yeah, it's interesting, how you got to take calls, to make things happen. So, how many people were involved in this, in this, your first experiment of connecting the two campuses? How many people were involved?
Of course, I was there
Yeah.
as the person heading the project. There were two other people,
Okay.
and one of them was Anant Joshi,
Mm-hmm.
and the other was Vinod Kumar.
Okay.
They were they were handling the programming, and in addition to programming, they handled a number of other things.
Okay.
And but a lot of the code, all the code in a sense, they
Mm.
wrote,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm.
so we were only three.
Mm.
And at one time, a senior communications person came
Mm.
to visit us,
Mm.
and I knew him well because we were involved in conferences, demos, and things like that.
Mm.
We were demoing computer networks for the railways,
Okay.
and that was in the year 81. Uh, at that time, the Deputy Director General of Telecommunications came to visit us because he
Mm-hmm.
was also involved. He was a participant in the railway demo,
Mm-hmm.
not a participant, a contributor. The links were all his. Bombay, Ahmedabad, Delhi,
Yes. Yes.
we
Mm.
had this running. And so here was a Deputy Director General who would come to the telephone exchange at 12 o'clock at night
Uh-huh.
I participated in setting up a data communication link, and we used our computer. We used other computers in Delhi and Ahmedabad. He came and asked me a question. How big is your team? I said, here is Vinod Kumar, here is Anant Kumar, and we had another colleague. I forget his name. He left fairly early. He was the Sardar, and he
Okay.
was there. There were four of us. He said, four? What are you telling me? He said. And I have, again, he said, I have 4,000 people reporting to me. And he said, I spend 1/3 of my time sitting in disciplinary proceedings. Somebody or the other does something or the other, and a case comes, I have to hear that. Now here you are sitting with three other colleagues and you are saying we are building a network.
Yeah.
And he was quite amused. But that is the academic style.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, amazing day. So, just to ask you this question, would you prepare the computers, put the software, and then send it to your nodes, or the coordinators in the nodes would prepare those things?
There were researchers and engineers at every one of those 8 centers I mentioned.
Okay.
A bulk of the work they did there.
Okay.
They could set up things themselves. They did, and they were doing R&D. They did a fair amount of publishing. They did a fair amount of education. Hundreds of engineers were trained for the Indian computer industry by all the 8 labs.
Okay.
So it was, we did not have to travel very much.
Okay.
Very often, our work very often had to be done interfacing with the world. One.
Correct.
And the second, running the central equipment in the beginning.
Okay.
That too, we did not have to do very far because very soon Delhi developed a terrific capacity to run central equipment.
Okay.
Indian Institute of Science developed a terrific capability to run it. So it was a distributed network.
Okay. Interesting. So we were talking about the making of the ERNet. What challenges did you see? You had proposed a, I think in 1981 or so, you had proposed to the government about setting up an academic network, and ERNet came about around 1983, correct?
ERNet, the real ERNet at multiple centers was 87.
87, okay. By the time it got rolled out, it was 87.
Huh?
By the time it got rolled out everywhere, it was 87.
It had not gone everywhere, but at least it went to Delhi. It went to Bombay, Delhi, and probably Madras or something. 2-3 places it had gone.
Okay.
So 87.
Okay. So around this time, you also, proposed that low Earth orbit satellite communication should be leveraged for data communication.
That was more like 81, 82.
81, 82, correct. Can you throw some light on that? What made you think on those lines?
It's a very interesting story. Particularly communication engineers who are interested in history could look at this. The fiber optics revolution had not completely had its effect by 1980. And it might have been there in the world, but it did not have that kind of impact that it had later. So at that time, satellite communication was attractive to places where fiber optics were not available.
Mm.
Therefore, many of us thought of satellite communication as a very important thing for developing countries.
Mm.
And it is, the story is not yet over, but in recent years, in the later part of the 80s and the 90s, satellite fiber optics became very, very important
Mm.
because fiber optic communication became more easily available, and became less expensive.
Mm. Mm.
Uh, Satellite communication lost a little ground.
Mm.
Satellite communication has not completely lost the ground because even today, satellite communication has a lot of significance in many places. We read in the newspaper about villages where network is not available easily. Children climb a hillock and then sit there in order to access the
Correct. Mm.
uh, cell phone connection from a neighboring city.
Mm.
And so satellite communication could be of value even now in places where good infrastructure is not available.
Mm.
Uh, in relatively remote areas, in hilly areas, in places where there is no high density of population, where that kind of thing. And the great day will be when satellite communication connects up with your cell phone.
Ah.
Today, you receive your satellite message, not even an SMS message
Mm.
or something like that, on your cell phone easily.
Mm.
But I visualize within 5-10 years, we will have a method of fairly easily getting communication to your cell phone in places where infrastructure is poor, straight from a satellite downwards.
Mm.
And in 1980 and all that, the situation was more or less like that almost everywhere.
Correct.
And therefore, we gave, uh, and also we saw developing countries in general, it's not only India.
Mm.
There were many, many, many developing countries in which uh, fiber optic networks were not available,
Mm.
and traditional networks were not available easily.
Mm.
Therefore, we looked at it from the point of view, partly we must recognize when we were worrying about networking for India,
Mm.
we are also worrying about networking for developing countries in general.
Okay.
There were, for instance, Zimbabwe,
Mm.
for instance, Tunisia, a lot of places like that, islands, Pacific
Mm.
islands.
Mm.
These were all interested in communication by satellite because uh, the traditional networking was very difficult.
Okay.
Then there was another angle. The other angle was centralized control.
Mm.
Uh, Traditional networks were controlled by, for instance, some uh, from a big company in a developed country would
Mm.
go and make satellite communication available to an island state and at fairly good cost.
Okay.
And so this was a problem, and a lot of people who were working what you may call not-for-profit organizations saw the need for communication of healthcare information.
Okay.
And and many of them had good familiarity with amateur radio kind of technology. And they asked the question, why can't we use amateur radio technology to make inexpensive, decentralized communication for healthcare? Why can't a rural hospital, a rural school, why can't they use satellite communication and get their job done? And I was thinking of in the same direction with respect to India as a whole.
Okay.
Many parts of India, infrastructure was not there, so you depended on inexpensive, non-centralized things that can be used by not-for-profit organizations, healthcare-oriented organizations, and so on.
Dr. Ramani, one second, Dr. Ramani. Are you comfortable? Are you okay?
I'm okay, except I'm sort of looking at what should I emphasize.
Okay. Because I'll tell you, your voice is a little slurred, which I did not notice in the first session.
Hold on. Yeah, I had to put the power on.
Okay. I was worried a bit, because you were sounding a little slurred. So I thought you were uncomfortable. Okay.
I also realized one important element in this low altitude satellite communication story. There is an institution called IDRC, International Development Research Center in Canada. It is run with the government funds. The Canadian Parliament has given them grants. And they were concerned by their definition. International Development Research Center is concerned about developing countries and their issues. And since the network style communication was becoming important, IDRC decided to set up a unit to worry about developing country communication.
Okay.
And they called an international conference. And I had gone to that conference. It was a workshop rather than a conference. And I had gone. And it appeared to me they were talking about communication problems in many developing countries around the world. And they were willing to spend some of their money to solve these problems. And they were looking for a solution.
Okay.
So I had fresh experience in building a 3-city satellite-based network in India. So with that background, I said, why don't we consider using a satellite? And as I talked about it more and more, within 2 or 3 days of the workshop, I came up with the idea that a special kind of satellite for electronic mail and related things would solve the problem. And I talked about this more and more with one American scientist who was there. I have to remember the name, unfortunately.
I think he was Dr. Miller, Dr. Robert Miller.
Robert Miller.
Yeah.
I started talking to Robert Miller, and Robert Miller agreed with me. And both of us developed the idea. And having developed it, we said, why don't we present a paper on this at this workshop?
Okay.
And we wrote a draft paper and presented it right there. IDRC communications group saw it and they liked it.
Mm-hmm.
They said, hey, we are willing to put in some money. Why don't you develop the paper and publish it at a major international conference? So we said yes, and we wrote a paper for the International Council for Computer Communication, their annual conference in London. And within 6 months, we were there presenting the paper. So the concern of IDRC for developing country communication, particularly for healthcare and things like that, wherever infrastructure was not available, was also a factor because they were like-minded people. And number of Indians who were connected with IDRC later on heard about this project and were quite interested. One was Professor Yashpal, one was Naidamma, and many people from India got quite interested. But it always remained a fairly small, not-for-profit kind of effort and never got to a national level, a very big, launching a geocentric satellite becomes very easily a national project. But a small satellite project, which is concerned with what you might call as innovation and low-cost solution and not-for-profit people and not concerned with the basic biggies who run the infrastructure